So my name is Sangram. I've been a data visualizer for almost a decade now. I started my data visualization journey in 2011, where I started as a data scientist. So I was in data science and analytics for a little about a year, and then I got pulled into this world of data visualization, and I kind of specialized in data visualization, and that's how my journey started there. I was working with a very large American investment bank back in 2011, and I ended up working with them for close to 6 years. I ended up heading the data visualization team there. Post which I worked with a couple of companies helping to set up data visualization teams and heading data visualization teams as well. And over the years now, I've done a lot of training and consulting. I've trained a few thousand people, maybe upwards of about 5,000 people on data visualization over the last 3 years. I've done consulting, long-term consulting for about 7 or 8 organizations as well, where I help companies set up teams, set up infrastructure, get started on data visualization. And today I serve as a principal consultant to two very large organizations where, again, I do the same thing. I train people on the skill of data visualization. I also help set up infrastructure technology and so on. Yeah. So really quick introduction about me. I'm also I'm a hobby visualizer, So I've created close to about 250, 300 different pieces on data visualization, which I keep putting up, but mostly on LinkedIn. And so over my career, I've spent time largely. What I do is I design dashboards, and those dashboards could be simple dashboards or they could be complex dashboards with complex data streams built either on like a Power BI or a Tableau. Also do a lot of work on PowerPoint and Excel. I've also designed quite a few, dozens and dozens of infographics as well. So anything to do with visual data or data-driven content, right? So I've kind of done a lot of that kind of work. And so I started this journey in training because I also have a background in L&D, right? So before I started my data science journey, which was in 2011, prior to that, I was in the HR team of a couple of organizations, right? So I kind of married the two, and so that's been my journey so far. And I'm going to take you through a few concepts today on data visualization. So in the interest of time, it's not going to be too in depth. But let's get started. So the first thing I would actually like to talk about is that typically in the corporate world, you see data visualization being applied in these two areas largely. So of course, we know that dashboards require data visualization because that's what essentially dashboards are. It's data that's been visualized for easy consumption and therefore easy decision making. And then of course, you've got slide decks. A lot of us have done this. I'm sure, where you take data from an Excel file and then you convert it into some sort of a visual, a chart, and then we paste it into our slide decks and then we present them or we send them over so that somebody can read them and consume them, right? So that's largely the two areas that data visualization works in the corporate world. Of course, there are other applications of data visualization, but this is largely in the business world that we're talking about. Now, talking about all of these different tools and technologies that exist, right? So we visualize data on something as simple as, like I mentioned, a PowerPoint deck, or we can go and create complex dashboards on like a Tableau or a Power BI or a ClickSense or whatever platform you're using, right? Maybe something web-based using Angular or D3, or you're doing something on R or Python, right? So those are just tools, right? So I always tell people that, there's always this very, very clear distinction between a tool and the skill of data visualization. Both are very separate things. The tool is your ability to use the tool, right? So where do you click? What do you do? How do you use it? How do you insert a chart? How do you format it, right? Using the actual tool, right? So where do I click? Where do I right click? So that's the application of the tool, right? That's how you learn the tool. And then what you apply within that tool is the skill of data visualization, the knowledge of data visualization, right? So think of it this way. Think of it in a way that, you're looking at, let's say you're sitting in a meeting or you're looking at a slide deck that's being presented by someone. Or the other way around, you're looking at a dashboard, right? So if you're looking at a dashboard and both are like really, really badly designed, navigation is bad, the user interface itself is bad, It's not very aesthetically pleasing. You've got a complex chart. You've got too much happening, too many labels, too many data points. We've seen those, right? Badly designed charts and visuals, right? You look at them and it kind of does something to you, right? It evokes this emotion, which is not a very positive emotion. You're thinking to yourself that, oh God, I have to look at one of these again and it's confusing and I can't make sense of this, right? And that's the difference between the tool and and data visualization, right? So we know how to use these tools, but do we use them effectively enough to convey our message, right? To convey our insights, to convey our key takeaways, right? So there's always this distinction between the tool, right? So we can learn the tool. It doesn't take too much time to learn the tool, but the skill and the art of data visualization, and of course, it's a science, but it is as much an art as it is science as well. And this is something that takes time to develop and hone, right? But it's a learnable skill. It's something that can be done very effectively over time. Okay. So having said that, I wanted to talk about the process a little bit, right? So the process of data visualization, how this whole thing works. So I came up with this process as a checklist for myself, right? So when I started, there used to be times when I was a little directionless, right? So this was like very, very early in my data visualization career. So I came up with this small little checklist, and then that checklist kind of grew, became a little more detailed. And then as it became detailed, I compressed it again into this sort of like this flow chart, right? So sometimes I use it as a flow chart, I use it as a checklist. And of course, I mean, I've been using it for so many years now that it's embedded into my brain. But I wanted to take you through essentially what the life cycle of a data visualization project would look like. Right, and then so what I do in my session is that I cover each of these points, right? So because they're kind of broken down into like these subtopics, right? So each step on the journey is like a subtopic that we have to kind of look into and dive into. All right. So the first three steps in any data visualization project are getting your data, familiarizing your data yourself with that data, and then cleaning that data, right? So step number two is, of course, you whenever you get a new project, you don't start off right away by, you don't start inserting charts. You go through that data. And by going through that data, I don't mean going in depth into the data. This is just taking that first quick look, right? So if for example, let's take the example of a spreadsheet, because I think that's something that everyone will be able to relate to. I'm not going to talk about databases. But when we talk about, let's say, a spreadsheet, right? You have a spreadsheet of data. You're going to open it up. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to see how big the file is, right? So how many rows we have, how many columns do we have, what are the different types of variables within that data set. And then you're going to look at how clean the data is, right? Is it in the correct format? Are the date formats like we need them? Are they in DDMM, YY format, or are they in MMDD? Are there any typos? Are there any errors? Are there any missing values? Are there any extra decimal places? And so that's where data cleaning comes in, right? A large part of the work actually involves data cleaning. Now, once you've cleaned your data, you've familiarized yourself with the data. That's where you start going deeper into your data. So data visualization is essentially useless if you're unable to convey some insights, right? So there are a few techniques to generate insights from your data, and this is what actually feeds your visual. This is what gives your chart. How do we say it? All right, that's the heart and soul of your chart, right? So a good insight, when conveyed effectively, is what data storytelling is all about, right? So there are a few techniques that you can use to go into your data and generate insights, right? Very, very important step. In fact, that's the first step. That's where the visual is born. Okay. Step number 5 and 6, right? So sometimes you need to reshape your data a little bit, right? So the easiest example that I can give you of reshaping data is, let's say, transposing your data, right? Or creating aggregates of your data, right? And then in step number 6, this is a good stage to, start thinking about, okay, so, I've found my insights. These are the 3 key things that I think, I need to communicate to a decision maker, right? Whoever he or she is. So you then need to start thinking about that story, right? So how do I tell this story in a visual manner, right? So that's when you start constructing your narrative. And then in step number 7 and 8, you start thinking about the visual, right? So I have my story in my head. Now, how am I going to convey this visually, right? So I'm going to, of course, I'm going to use some sort of a chart. Now, which chart do I use, right? So there's like a huge library of charts. Which one do I use? It's going